Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with entrepreneur, author, teacher, mystic, and storyteller John Latta. Terrified and stalked by an oppressive fear of death, John was a single dad with 2 children facing rock bottom, loneliness, and bankruptcy. Hard work, arguments, and logic were getting him nowhere. The competition was tough, and he was in over his head. Today, he's a retired founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar consumer products company. These days, he shares intimate and personal stories and teaches workshops on leading, healing, transformation, awakening, love, synchronicity, and wisdom that unite and expand the human experience. It's an enlightening interview. Enjoy.
Joe, how's it going, buddy?
I'm wonderful. How are you today?
So far, so good.
Good. Where are you coming out of?
I'm in the Seattle area.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, hey, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I would like to start everything off by asking you, the last 3 years living through COVID has done its own thing to all of us, and I'm curious how you survived that time period and how it's changed the way that you do things now as we enter this kind of busier post-pandemic period.
Well, let's see. I owned my own company for a lot of years, and I sold it in October of 2019, which, not knowing COVID was right around the corner, and I think I kiss the ground every time I think about it. So I really entered retirement or semi-retirement when COVID hit. My wife and I, because I'd never been on a vacation longer than 10 days my entire life, took off in the car in February of 2020 on a 3-month road trip from Seattle to Florida and back. And again, didn't know when we left that COVID was going to turn out to be anywhere near as big as it turned out to be. And it chased us all across the country. Excuse me. And so halfway into the vacation, everything was closed. And we kept thinking, gosh, should we just turn around and head back home? I'm sorry, Joe.
You're fine.
But we continued on the trip, and it actually ended up being one of the coolest things ever. I went to all these sites and monuments, and nobody was there. Like, it was strange. It felt like the nation was deserted. Like, sometimes I would look at my wife and say, do you feel like we're the last 2 people on Earth? And nobody on the road. In the Deep South, gas got down to $1.09 a gallon. It was amazing. And so when we came back, in all honesty, we just kind of laid low like a lot of people. I didn't have a job to go to. And like a lot of people, I wrote a book. So I kept myself busy doing that. And then about a year ago, so the book came out just a little over a year ago, about a year ago. And I've been kind of playing book marketer ever since. I've been on a lot of podcasts promoting my book. And then just this year have started teaching groups and, having gatherings and stuff, mostly at my home here. So it was relatively, it didn't affect us too much. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, that adventure sounds wonderful. So I'm curious, when you were a kid, what was your dream growing up? What did you want to become?
Actually, it was different at each age. When I was really little, I wanted to be an entomologist because I love bugs. Later, I wanted to be an athlete of some kind, a football or basketball player. Later, I think by high school, I realized I wasn't good enough or big enough to do that. I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur and a businessman. I wanted to be rich and retire at 40 so I could go do fun things whenever I felt like it. So that was probably the gamut right there.
So talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how some of these seeds got into you to, be a business owner, to be an author, to be someone that's highly driven.
Sure. I was born in Stockton, California, but at the age of 3, we moved to Long Beach, California, so that's where I grew up. When I was 14, the company my father worked for sort of blew up, and for some reason it seemed like we lost everything, and so we packed up and moved up to Seattle, which is where most of our family was from, and they, I guess you could say, started all over here. So I went to high school here in the Seattle area. And I think the 2 things that really impacted me, it's always some small thing. I read the book, Think and Grow Rich, when I was in high school. And I think there was a couple of other books, similar theme. One was called Psycho-Cybernetics, and the other was called The Magic of Thinking Big. They both profoundly influenced me, and I just somehow reading the books had this idea, like if I could summarize why some people are more successful or achieve more than others, they just thought bigger. And so that's really was the theme of all these books. It's just sort of where your mind is the key. And at the same time, there was a book that came out that was really popular then called The Case Against College. That was really focused on why college might be a waste of time and money. And my father was talking about that a lot too, and he would always say, well, you'll never get rich working for somebody else. And so those were seeds that got planted at a young age, and it did take me quite a while before I broke away completely to start my own company. But there still was always this underlying theme that I wanted to have a company, I wanted to make a lot of money so that I could have a lot of freedom. There wasn't really I wasn't materialistically driven. It was more like I was more freedom driven, and I felt like having lots of money would give me lots of freedom.
So who's been kind of your hero in your life?
Who is the hero in my life?
Yeah, somebody who's been a hero for you in your life.
Well, in the last half of my life, my hero, without a doubt, was a spiritual teacher I met a little over 20 years ago by the name of Dr. William Brew Joy. He went by his middle name, Brew. And Brew was a very eminent Southern California physician, incredibly intelligent. He was in the Medical Scholastic Society, the top 1% of all medical students in the nation, very successful internist. And he had dreams when he was young that everything in his life was going to change when he became 35. And that's exactly what happened. And, one minute he's this very eminent, in fact, at the age of 35, he was being prepared to run the American Medical Association. He was sort of this good-looking golden boy, intelligent, spoke really well, and he was going to be moving into medical politics on the side. But it turned out everything in the dream came true. He had a whole bout with pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer, and then a meditation that basically, it felt like God himself was yelling at him saying, your career as an orthodox medical physician is over. And he proceeded to follow this inner voice for almost a year. He ended up selling his medical practice, traveling all over the world to sacred sites. And his words, he goes, reawakening old soul memories. And he comes back 9 months later, and now instead of an eminent physician, he's a spiritual teacher and did it for the rest of his life. And so he was a hero to me in a number of regards. One, I have a very rich dream life, as did he. Two, I get a lot of guidance from his dreams, and I've learned to trust it, as did he. And it takes a lot of courage to leap from something where you're famous into something that's you're starting from scratch. To give up this multimillion-dollar medical practice to be a spiritual teacher, that took a lot of courage. And so I would say in the last half of my life, he's been a hero. I also love Michael Crichton, the author, who I had the opportunity to meet once, and a lot of synchronistic threads allowed me to meet a lot of people that knew Michael. I was best friends with Carolyn Conger, who was Michael Crichton's godmother to Michael's daughter. And she and Michael were best friends. Well, Michael also, he wrote a book, a nonfiction book called Travels that most people don't know about. He's got jillions of best-selling fictional novels, TV shows, movies, but a lot of people don't know he wrote a nonfiction book. And he went through a midlife crisis at a young age. At the age of 30, he realized he'd achieved every goal in his entire life. He was a graduate of Harvard Medical School. He'd had best-selling novels, TV shows, movies, and he suddenly didn't know what he was going to do for the rest of his life. And it was terrifying to him. And one of the things that hit him was he realized he hadn't actually experienced directly himself a lot of life. What he thought to be true, he only got from books and from teachers and from school and from things other people taught him. So he decided everything that he thought was true, he was going to go experience for himself and decide what he thought about it. And man, he tried everything. He traveled all around the world to all these exotic places. He tried, he hung out with psychics. He did meditation, a lot of unusual spiritual practices. And I just loved the explorer in him. It was like, I've read about this. I want to try it for myself. I've read about it. I want to try it for myself. And he said he got that from an essay that somebody wrote called Direct Experience, and said, it's actually shocking how much we take as truth just because we heard it on the news, or a friend told us, or we learned it at school, or our parents told us, but we didn't actually experience it for ourselves. So I say he would be another hero of mine.
So with that being the context, is there anyone alive on the planet right now that you would love to meet and spend some time with?
That's a really good question. You have to remember I'm 64 years old now, so I want to say I've moved in and out of a lot of heroes. I can't really think of anybody right now that I would like to meet. There's been a lot of people along the way that I would have liked to have met, and a lot of them I did, and some of them have passed away already, but I'd have to think about that, Joe. I can't think of a single person that I would be dying to meet right now.
Well, and I guess let me kind of rephrase this a little bit and ask you this. What's been the best advice that you've ever gotten? Who gave you advice that's just been indispensable for you in your life?
I'm trying to think. I've encountered so many really wise people in my life. I'm trying to think of advice the best advice I ever received. I can't think of anybody, Joe. I'm sure there's been dozens, if not hundreds. I'm trying to think of something that somebody told me that was like great advice. I think it would be easier for me to say a lot of wise people have shared their wisdom with me. And sometimes it's something as simple as, let's just see what tomorrow will bring. It's so easy to catastrophize when things are going wrong in your life. And so a simple thing might be, this too shall pass. I've dug myself in some deep holes where both times I was exploring bankruptcy, and it was humiliating and humbling and really difficult. But somehow, some way, I dug myself out instead of having to go bankrupt. And I think maybe that's the advice I would give others is, even if it looks horrible, let's just see what tomorrow will bring. Don't be too quick to throw in the towel.
That is great. Let me ask you this. Being a highly driven person, what is your motivating force? What is your fuel in your tank every day that you get up and live your life and do these things that you do?
Well, so you have to remember, I was really driven by money, and money to me felt like freedom. It didn't feel like yachts and cars and houses, because I didn't really care about those things. I was driven by money and freedom. I really wanted to go explore the world. But I think, in the arc of a person's life, even if you've heard the term the hero's journey, at some point the hero comes home and wants to share what he's learned with the world. The hero's gone out and explored and experienced a lot of things. So I'm 64 years old now, and my book is called The Synchronicity of Love, and it's 119 short, true stories. And so I think what gets me up in the morning is I want to share with people there's so much more to life than we might think, but we have to be willing to get ourselves out of the box that we're in. There's a great quote from Rilke that goes, "Some evening, take a step out of your house, which you know so well. Enormous space is near." And it's sort of an abstract thing, but that's been my experience. There were so many things that I just thought I knew about. I had them locked away in a box, sort of a black and white thinker. And what the last half of my life has been about tearing apart all the walls and all the boxes. And things aren't so black and white. And there's a lot more to things if we're willing to open our mind and open our heart and go experience them. And so that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is probably helping people, if they want to and they're willing, to open their mind and open their heart, because there's so many things that they're probably missing.
What's the best client success story that you've been involved with, something that brings a smile to your face?
One of my clients?
Yeah, something you've been involved with directly, yes.
So one of the things I do is I gather people together in circles. I did it here just last Saturday. We had 22 people. We create a nice, warm, loving, heart-centered space, and I try to encourage people to speak truthfully. What's it like to take your mask off and tell the world, completely unprotected, completely vulnerable, what the hell it's like to be you? What's it like to live in your shoes? And if you've ever been, Joe, around somebody around like that just is always honest. They're always authentic. They're always truthful. And I'm not saying truthful like, I think you're a total asshole kind of truthful, but more like they're just, they never wear a mask. They never pretend to be anybody other than who they are or what they're feeling or experiencing in the moment. It's a wonderful thing. And when I'm around people like that, it sort of gives me the courage to speak that way. And I actually wish the whole world could be that way. Instead of running around with, everybody smiling at the emperor, it's okay to say the emperor has no clothes, and so I think that's where I get the most enthusiasm, is people touch into something that's really true and authentic for them. And that's the face that they want to wear, not the face that they think they have to show up as to be famous or to be rich or to be popular. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm not. Certainly there's been tons of stories I can tell you about people that had a really hard time in their life and then they turned their life around and things were awesome. But if you live long enough, you go through many cycles of, I'm a rock star and now I'm a fading rock star. Now I'm doing really well at this. Now I'm not doing so well at this. I don't think life is really a beginning, middle, and end. I don't think life is I was a bum and now I'm rich and famous. I think people just go through all sorts of cycles in their life. And so I would say those are the people that I feel happiest about, the ones that have the courage to be honest and speak truthfully and not feel like they have to wear a mask of some kind anymore.
No, you answered that wonderfully. So I'm curious, of all of the travels and the roads you've been down in your life, we all gain wisdom.
Yeah.
If you were to run into your 20-year-old version of yourself in a dream tonight, you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What would you tell that young version?
So that young version was extremely anti-spiritual, anti-religious, almost like Nazi skinhead anti-religious, and I think I had closed myself off to a lot of things, including what I would just call inner guidance, a sense of that small, quiet voice that's actually quite wise that lives inside me. And for me, a lot of that wisdom comes through dreams. But I think I had shut it all down completely. And so I think I would just say, look, dude, you don't have to go to church if you don't want to go to church. But maybe just open your mind a little bit. Open your heart a little bit. You're so driven to making lots of money, opening your mind and heart a little bit might actually be able to help that. And I think I was overly black and white, overly logical and objective, which are great qualities, but if that's the only thing that you rely on, life can feel kind of empty, I think. So I'd probably put my arm around him and just say, look, if you don't want to go to church and pray with everybody and follow scripture and dogma, that's fine, but just open your mind and heart a little bit, because there's some other wisdom that's available to you and you're just shutting it out.
So what are you the proudest of that you've accomplished in your life up to this point?
So my own journey, I think, has gone from being overly rational, overly what most people would call masculine, driving, competitive, aggressive, logical to a fault. And if the feminine counterpart would be being more compassionate, being a better listener, bringing love to a situation, bringing patience to a situation. I think that's really funny to say, but I think I'm proudest of the fact that I've been able to sort of embrace and integrate a lot of opposite qualities that I just didn't have when I was young. And so I have learned to go for a walk with somebody and to enjoy just listening to them. And I'm actually astounded how much just listening to somebody can help them. You know, I don't have to always jump in and solve their problems and tell them what they're doing wrong and this and that. Sometimes just walking along with them and listening. I've learned a lot about patience, a lot about presence, a lot about compassion. And I think, you know, I did have my company. I did sell it. I did make a lot of money. I was on paper very successful. But I think, again, all of whatever the opposite of that hard-driving, masculine, success goal-oriented would be, I think that's the thing I'm actually proudest of. I've been able to start to embrace some of those opposite qualities as well.
So you had mentioned the whole mask idea before. I'm curious with you. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Well, if I had to put labels on it, I think today I am what I would call an inner explorer. I'm very curious about what happens to me when I meditate and in my dreams. Like, I'm just aware there's enormous wisdom there. You know, a lot of people don't know some of the most incredible discoveries throughout time have come through dreams. I'm going to get them all mixed up, but, you know, whoever, was it Niels Bohr that understood the anatomy of atoms and things like that. I think the whole chemical table came, I think it was Tesla, and he had, you know, his way of doing it. I mean, all of these people, these great discoveries came through dreams. Salvador Dali, all of his crazy paintings, they came from dreams. And I forget, I think it was Edison that was aware there was so much wisdom out there that he just couldn't seem to access. And he created an experiment where he would sit in a chair and ask a question, fall asleep, and then as he fell asleep, he would drop something and it'd wake him up. And he would try to capture what was being answered to him in the dream, and he would try and write it down as quick as he could before he forgot it. And so I think I would say today I'm sort of an inner explorer. And then when I come out, I like to share what I've discovered with other people and teach other people to do the same. Like, you have an inner wisdom, and here's some ways to access it. And, you know, I think some people say, you know, we're only what percent conscious and, you know, a greater percent unconscious. And my first teacher said we're like 0.00001% conscious and 99.999%, you know, repeating unconscious. That's staggering when you really think about it. And and so I would say a person who likes to meditate and go on inner explorations, and a teacher at the same time who wants to share what I've learned, and but in a practical way, because at my core I'm actually a really practical person, and teach other people to do the same thing. How can they find their inner wisdom and trust it?
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that answer. So if anyone out there wants to indulge any more into your world, learn more about you, anything about you, where can they go?
My website, johndavidlatta.com. It's JOHNDAVID, and the last name is LATTA, johndavidlatta.com. My book is called The Synchronicity of Love. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and last I heard it's in Target and Walmart, too.
Wonderful, John. This has been great. Thank you so much for your story and opening up the box to so many great stories and treasures. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate being a guest on your show. Appreciate the invitation.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.